Hi everyone, it's Jamie and welcome back to my gaming channel. Here on my kind of like variety gaming channel, I like to talk about a bunch of different games. Sadly, the vast majority of my content so far has really been about The Sims. I haven't posted in a hot minute just because of my kind of crazy new work schedule and whatnot, but I have taken like the last week off from work because it's really needed a staycation from that job because it's really kind of grinding my last gears. I've been playing a lot for the last few months, especially this past week. I'm playing a lot of Resident Evil. I currently have been like borrowing a copy of the Resident Evil 2 remake for my friend for like the last 3 months. Don't know if he's ever getting it back because I can't stop playing it. As well as I was able to get my hands on a copy of Resident Evil 4, which I used to own, but I think my brother might have it, or it's probably was at my mother's house, which means it's gone. And I just finished that yesterday. So I've been thinking a lot about Resident Evil because I'm a huge fan of it, but I thought I would take a moment and make a tier list where I am going to rank the main Resident Evil protagonists from all of the main games. So for those of you who have played the games or maybe played a few or heard of them, essentially there's Resident Evil 1 through 6. Then there's a bunch of spin-offs such as Resident Evil Dark Side Chronicles, Raccoon City Chronicles, Code Veronica, Resident Evil Gaidon, how you pronounce it. That one's not canon, by the way. And there's a bunch of other Resident Evil games, and then like the main ones. For the purpose of this video, so it's not too long, I'm just doing the main games, but I'm also including Resident Evil 0, which is a prequel that came out a few years after the first one, like quite a bit. And technically, I think it should be considered like a spin-off, so it shouldn't be considered part of the main canon, but I've decided to include it just because I do really like Rebecca Chambers as a character. For my list, I'm going to show you who I've added. Some of them I think I have to justify a little. All right, so here's the tier list. It goes from S to D, S being the best, A, good, solid character, B, B's fine, C, you're passing, and D is like pretty much a failure on this list. For the main characters, of course, I've put them in order of chronological, not so much the year they came out, and because of that, Resident Evil 0 came out after 1 and 2 and 3, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, I think it was like 2002 or something it came out. So I have Rebecca Chambers here from Resident Evil 0. She's also a non-playable character in Resident Evil, the first one. Then from the first game, I have Jill and Chris. Of course, this is Chris from Resident Evil 5 and Jill from the remake of 3. I just used this because it's the best images I could find. Then from Resident Evil 2, I have Claire and Leon, as well as I also included Sherry and Ada. Technically, in that game, you wouldn't consider them main characters, but since Sherry is a playable character in 6 and has her own mission in 2, I'm considering her main character. Same with Ada. Ada has her own like one chapter mission in 2, as well as has her own like mini campaign in Resident Evil 4 and her own campaign in 6 that's unlockable. So I'm considering her a main antagonist. Protagonist. You might be like, she's more of an antagonist than protagonist, or maybe you might want to consider her more of like an anti-hero. I'm a huge Ada Wong fan. Oh, hello, Harley. This is Harley, our little baby kitty. We have 3 cats, all kittens, all from the same litter. Whatever you're doing, don't come on the desk, please. No. All right, she's on my bed. So I'm considering Ada a main character just because of how often you can play as her, and I do quite like her. It's also rumored that she was supposed to be either like a playable or maybe just an NPC in 8, and people are now thinking there might be some DLC for her that might come out for 8, so we'll have to see. Then from 3, we have Carlos. Technically, he's a main character, but you don't play as him as often as you do as Jill, and he's only in 3, but I felt like it's only fair to include him. Then we have Sheva from 5. She's only in 5, and we haven't seen her since, but you can play as her, and I actually do think she's a quite fun and interesting character. Then we have Helena, Jake, and Piers from 6. And even though we'll never see Piers again, we could potentially see Helena. Ooh, where did my list go? There we go. I hate ads on this website. We have Helena. We could see Helena and Jake again. I think it's even teased that Jake's going to get another game. And even though in their missions, I definitely think, like in Helena and Leon's mission, Leon's definitely the main character, but I'm going to consider her. And then here we have the hand of everyone's favorite Ethan Winters, who's been the main protagonist of 7 and 8, and rumored for 9 as well. So, let's get into this list. Pretty much how I'm going to be ranking them is because especially like what kind of special abilities they get, especially for the characters that have appeared a lot, like Leon, who's been in 2, 3, and 6, kind of thinking about his evolution as a character as well, not just his special moves, but also thinking of special abilities each character get. For example, in the first Resident Evil game, you can play as Jill or Chris. If you play as Chris, you get more like hit points. Like, so it's you can take damage a lot easier, but Jill can pick locks. I think she also has a smaller inventory, if I remember correctly. It's been a long time since I played the first Resident Evil game, but she can pick locks, so you don't have to, like, if you're playing as Chris, you have to find the keys while she can pick them. For Leon and Claire in the Resident Evil 2 remake, which I've played the most, I've played the original like a very long time ago, but at least in the remake, Leon definitely in his mission, I think his guns aren't as great as Claire's, and he gets more boss fights, but I do think his final boss fight with Mr. X is a little easier than Claire's final boss with William Birkin G-Monster on the platform. I think hers is a little bit harder. So there's definitely like that to weigh. Sherry, she gets some pretty cool abilities in 6. Ada, her, generally when you get a campaign for her, or a mission for her, there's a lot more puzzles to it, which I think is fun. For Carlos, guns. Sheva, she's definitely a little bit faster than Chris, and she has a few more fun moves when fighting. Chris is more like tanky punch. She definitely has some more interesting kind of like martial arts kind of fighting style. So it's like things like that when placing these characters, thinking about like story arcs. So of course the characters in more games might be a little bit more interesting. Their special abilities and just things like that. And which ones also I just think are more fun to play. Because some characters I think are really good characters to play, but maybe not as fun from just like a gamer standpoint, if that makes sense. So we're going to start off with Rebecca Chambers here. Rebecca, I'm going to put her as B. I think Rebecca, at least in Resident Evil 0, she's a decent character. And even though your partner is an AI, I think she's still like, she can definitely hold her own. Part of the reason I'm also putting her at B is she hasn't really been in any large staple Resident Evil games. I think she's in one of the other spin-offs. Is she in Dark Side? She's in one of the Chronicles, I think. I could be wrong, don't quote me on that. But yeah, we haven't really seen much of her, so her as a character hasn't been really fully fleshed out as much. So maybe in the future we'll see a little bit more of Rebecca, but for this moment here, putting her in B. Because, I think she's a decent character. Like, she's not bad. So, like, B's, like, right in the middle. So, yeah, she's fine. Then we have Jill and Chris. I'm going to put Jill as an S tier. And the reason for that is even though so far she's only been playable in Resident Evil and then Resident Evil 3, her character arc between 1 3, especially with the remake, is the way they really delved into her PTSD that she kind of developed after the incident in the Spencer Mansion, and kind of how that plays into a role in Resident Evil 3, as well as in Resident Evil 5, that kind of story arc they came up with her, I think is just very interesting. Don't want to spoil it for too much for anyone who hasn't played it yet, but she does have kind of like a very important role in 5. I also just think she's a great character. It's really sad we haven't seen much of her since 5, and I'm really hoping she comes up in a later game. Chris here, I do like Chris. I don't want that to be, put that down. I think a lot of people are like, who's better, Chris or Leon? I'm going to put him in A tier. I did think about putting him in B tier just because I think his backstory is a little like, he was the best at what he did in the military. Was he a fighter pilot? He was something. And he's supposed to be like the best of the best. I don't want to say it's like a Mary Sue kind of thing, but it does kind of feel like you're giving him so much to justify why he's on this special stars kind of like tactic force thing. I don't know. It feels a little like whatever to me. I do think he's kind of not the most interesting character. As far as like characters go, he does, in my opinion, feel a little bit more bland. And, there's nothing wrong with that. Bland people deserve respect. But, it does kind of, I don't know. Part of the reason I do really like him, though, is in 5, there's this really great moment where there's kind of like this flashback where he's given, or like there's a moment where he's given like a chance to like kind of like change how he would react in a certain situation when it comes down to his partner about to sacrifice herself. And I just think it's a great moment. It shows a lot of growth for the character, and also shows like a really great moment of like someone overcoming like an inner demon of theirs. So Chris, I'll put there. He's been a little sketchy recently as a kind of background character in 7 and 8, so don't know what's going on with him now, but we'll put him in A. Then we have Claire. So far, Claire has only been in one major title. She's the second or the first main character, because there's in Code Veronica you play as her and then as Chris. And I definitely think she's, of the two siblings of her and Chris, she's the more interesting one. It does suck she's really only been in one game, or one main game. She's been in a bunch of the spin-offs. I'm going to put her in S, just because I think Claire's a great character. I love her character arc in Resident Evil 2. I definitely prefer to play as Leon, but I just love that there's this willingness in her to just go out of her way to do the right thing. And it's not, doesn't feel very self-serving for her. I like it. I think it makes her a fun character. Next we have Leon. He's an S tier. Leon's been in 2, 4, and 6. And to see that growth of a character, it's quite interesting, because in 2, he's like this rookie cop, not the most, confident, a little goofy. And then in 4, we see he's a little bit more hardened and a little bit more, emo and dramatic after the events of Raccoon City. And you can definitely see how it's affected him just in how he, even fights. Because in 2, he's very much like, especially when you play the remake of 2, he can barely do anything. But then in 4, he's literally like roundhouse kicking people. I love it. And then the same in 6. So I love to see this kind of like more innocent, soft boy kind of like go through this very rugged change. But also there's still a part of him that is still very innocent and very naive at times. So it's nice to see that part of his character arc just kind of pulled all the way through. I think he's, of all the main Resident Evil characters, he's definitely the most developed. But we stan Leon Kennedy in this household. Next we have Sherry Birkins. She was a kind of like secondary character in Resident Evil 2, and you got to play as her in one chapter. And then you get to play as her again in 6. And in 6, you find out after the events of 2, where she was infected with the G virus, it has mutated her a little, where now she has like kind of this cool healing factor. So if you're playing as her, you might not be as skilled as like Jake, for example, because their missions are together, but you are going to have like a natural healing factor. I'm going to put her at B just because story character wise, I do feel like there was such a long time between we saw her 2 and 6 that I guess like I can't say that this wasn't a natural progression for that character, but I didn't get to see that progression. It's also kind of like one of my critiques between Resident Evil 2 and 4 is we don't really see Leon become this more rugged character. We just meet him again and he is more rugged, and he kind of, you can tell it's because of Raccoon City because he fixates on it so much. But but I do like Sherry, but I'm putting her as B because her kind of like put her and Rebecca in the same way. I just don't think they've been fleshed out enough. Next, we have Miss Ada Wong. Miss Ada Wong is getting S tier. Yes, do we know we don't know shit about her. Who is she? Where does she live? Why does she do the things she does? Bitch, I don't know. But we support her. She's a hard-working lady. Ada Wong is one of my all-time favorite characters in the Resident Evil franchise. I just think it's so fun to have a character like that where you don't really know what her motives are, because then it really does leave so many more opportunities in the game to kind of like take a little bit of a twist. Like in 4, you definitely know she's there for a sample, but she's also there looking out for Leon, and it's kind of like okay, what's going on between you two? And it's not so much like in 2 where she definitely was using him. And then in 6, I just love her. 6 is not a great game. I'm just going to put that out there. But I love her mission in 6. Not only does it fill in a lot of the blanks, but Next, we have Carlos. Carlos, he's kind of boring. He's one of those characters where I'm never like, oh, I miss him. Wish he was in more games. I'm like, he had his moment in 3, and the moment has passed, and we've all moved on. People who ship him and Jill together have no flavor. I'm gonna put that out there. Next is Miss Sheva. Sheva's getting an A tier. Not everyone likes Sheva, and to those people I say, I don't care. Don't talk to me. We don't have to agree. And I'm just gonna put her in A tier because we stan Miss Sheva. I just like her kind of special abilities in the game, where she's a little bit more of like a martial arts kind of fighting style. Things kind of makes her really stand out from Chris. I also really like the game goes out of their way to do some really interesting parallels between her and Jill. And it's a shame we haven't seen her since Resident Evil 5. Hopefully, maybe she can get a moment in another game, because we do stan. Next, we have Helena. Gonna put her in C. I just don't think she's the most interesting character. I think she's fine, and I think she's a really good partner for Leon. But other than that, I'm just kind of like, yeah, she's fine. Next, we have Jake here. Jake, being the child of Wesker, gives him some pretty cool powers and a pretty cool, interesting character arc where, like, he wants to do good, but also, his father's been murdered by someone who's supposed to be a good guy. So it really adds a lot of interesting depth to his character. I'm going to put him in B tier. I'm really interested to see what they do with this character. I think for me, that's really what's going to set him apart and maybe move him up in this list in the future. There's definitely was a hint at the end of 6 that he has his own game coming. I don't know if that's going to be Resident Evil 10, because I know 7, 8, and 9 are supposed to be like their own little trilogy about Ethan Winters. So we'll see what we do with Mr. Man here. But at the moment, I'm like, yeah, he's fine. Then we have Piers. I'm going to also put him at B. I wanted to put him higher because he is quite a good fighter. He has some great skills, and his character arc is a really nice one, especially because of his relationship with Chris and just kind of that kind of like brotherly like fraternity between them is really nice. And the way he sacrifices himself for Chris, just like, it's really nice. And that moment actually in 6 does give me a lot of chills. Once again, 6 is not a great game, but it has amazing moments. It has good pieces, but just there's something not working in it. So we're gonna put him at B. And sadly, because he did sadly passed along in 6, we're never gonna get a chance to like develop him further unless he's in like a prequel. So like they did with Krauser, who asked for that. So we're gonna put him in B. Next we have Ethan Winters. I know Ethan is the main character of 7 and 8, but he is by far the least interesting thing in either game. And maybe that's fine because it does make him feel a little bit more like a self-insert. We're gonna put him in C tier. We're gonna see him one more time. And like, I don't hate Ethan Winters. Like characters like Carlos, I'm fine with never seeing again. He had his moment. His moment came, it passed, and I went, well, it was a moment. And, same with Helena. I'm like, if we don't see Helena again, I think I'll be fine. But if we do, I'll definitely be like, oh, hey, Miss Helena, welcome back. Ethan, I know he's coming back. I know we're going to deal with this man again. Sorry to this man. But, I think I'm fine with Ethan coming back because I think, once again, the character, especially in 8, every character in 8 is so interesting. And I think it's fine that he's kind of boring, but I'm going to have to put him in C for that solely. Also, I don't really know what's going on with this man and why this man does the things he does. He just does. So that is my tier list. Once again, I understand there's probably going to be people in the comments going, why didn't you include this character? I tried to explain my reasoning to why these characters were in it and why... and, you can probably infer from there. Let me know if you would like me to do, like, an antagonist / like, villain or monster list. Might have to do monsters and antagonists separate. But then there's, like, a question like, where does Mr. X go then? Or even Nemesis. Because, like, yes, they're monsters, but they're also antagonists. So, we're gonna have to think about that one if I do that list. Let me know if you agree with my list. Let me know if there's any characters you think need to be swapped or moved. Let me know if you think any of, like maybe you're out here going, Leon deserves D. Fuck that man. Let me know in the comments. I will vehemently disagree. Leon Kennedy is the man I love. I also want to do one of, like, side characters, like, especially ones who are just in, like, one game or something. Like, for example, the... merchant from Resident Evil 4. That man is the only man to have ever treated me right, so he deserves to be on the list somewhere. Anyways, let me know down in the comments what you think. Let me also know which Resident Evil game is your favorite, if you've played any of them. I always love hearing or like seeing which ones people love. I know at the moment everyone's loving 8. I'm still very much a Resident Evil 2 stan. Just love it. Love the zombies. Just love it all. So, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.